This is my true life story about my family. It is painful, but it opened my eyes to understand the difference between the rich and the poor. This story, it might be relatable to you or somebody you know. The last 3 months have been painful. My family has gone from being rich to using food banks. It was my dad. He plunged us into this situation because he invested in some scheme. He was always taking risks, especially behind Mama's back. He used our house, old house, to get a huge loan, and then everything went wrong. He didn't tell us at first. He just shouted and argued with everybody for days and days. I was terrified. That wasn't him. Then he called us into his study and told us everything. He said we had weeks to pay back the money or they'd strip us bare. I'll never forget those words. He promised he'd sort it, and he had connections and friends. He promised we'd not be on the streets. My younger sister, Liana, didn't understand, but she knew from Mama's face it was terrible. I heard Daddy calling his friends for the next few days, but no one answered. He left voicemail after voicemail and nothing. That's when I saw him cry for the first time. It broke me. You should never see your parents cry. I tried to help. I contacted some friends asking them to get their parents to call my dad, but they turned their backs on me. I'd known Katie all my life, and she said she couldn't speak to me anymore because I was poor. I felt like a disease. Soon, everyone at my school unfollowed and blocked me on social media. I didn't know what to do. I tried to speak to Mum, but she'd stopped talking, stopped getting out of bed. She just lay, crying and crying. My dad had to cook for us, and when he was busy, I had to. Boiling pasta is more complex than it looks. It took 3 weeks for us to be out of our family home. 3 weeks for Dad to try everything and fail. 3 weeks for my whole world to crumble. We were put into a shelter at first. Mum shuffled around like a zombie, and Dad kept promising it was temporary. Everything was temporary. His words worked on Liana, but I saw through them. Our poverty was permanent. We were in the glum hall with hundreds of other families. For the first few days, it was hard. I had to share the shower and line up for meals. Soup and bread, 3 times a day. But the other families seemed okay with it. No one cried and people got along. I didn't understand. They slept on mattresses and had no money, but found time to laugh. I thought they'd be fighting and chaotic, but they were normal. After a few days, we were taken to a hotel. It was dingy and smelled like disinfectant, but we got our own room and our own bathroom. No more sharing. I managed to keep a smile for Papa. He was struggling. Mum still didn't do or say much. A whisper and a nod. I was worried about her. Liana was the most positive out of all of us. She saw everything as an adventure and kept telling us stories about happy families. I contacted my friends during this time. The hotel had free internet, but they didn't want to know me. Caddy had even taken down all of our pictures together on Instagram. How could a friend treat me like that? I was worried about what would happen when I returned to school from the summer holidays. So I spoke to Dad, who told me not to worry because I was going to a new school. I didn't know what to say. A new school? New people? Would they hate me too? The idea haunted me for the rest of the summer, and then something happened during the last weekend. Before I had to face my new school, we went to the food bank. Minus Dad, as he'd found a job. The money wasn't great, but it was money. I'd learned to take the bus, which wasn't too difficult once I understood how they worked. With my new transport knowledge, I got myself, Liana, and Mum to the food bank. An old church building with enormous stained glass windows. I was wearing a high-neck jumper and a huge cap. I couldn't risk being seen. We queued up waiting for our weekly food package. Mum still zombied, Liana talking about everything she saw. And in the queue was a family ahead of us, a mother and a son. The mother was greying and had a walking stick that kept her upright, and her son was my age. They were talking to each other, and then they turned to Mum and me and asked how we were doing. A simple question, but I was stumped. It was the first time anyone had asked us that. They were strangers. I was about to nod when Mum spoke and said, "Fine." Liana and I looked at each other stunned. The boy, Jacob, asked if we wanted the milk from his food package. He and his mother never drank it. I thanked his generosity, and Jacob told me he goes to Heathcote High, my new school. He gave me his TikTok handle and said that his friends would show me around the school. He never asked me why I was at a food bank. He never asked me what car my dad drives. He just spoke to me. His mum spoke to my mum and managed to get more words from her. I couldn't believe it. When we got home that evening, I realized I looked at people without money as being without character. I'd done that my whole life. I judged them, sneered them, and now I was one of them. Was I without character? Being cut off from Caddy and my friends opened my eyes. They only cared about me because I had money. Yes, I wasn't rich anymore, but I still had value. Everyone has value. It wasn't conditional. Losing everything can be a challenging and difficult experience, but it's important to remember that it's not the end of the road. It can be an opportunity for growth, change, and new beginnings. Please subscribe to this channel for more true life stories. It's free to subscribe.